Rings of Power has a Galadriel problem, and it's only getting worse. Oh sure, she started off where she was just an entirely insufferable arse.
There is a tempest in me!
Ranging from the passive disdain of not caring if they make it up a mountain,
I wish I could be one of them.
to the active and deliberate act of leaving somebody in the snow to die.
Commander! Wait!
No! We keep moving!
Galadriel!
Even though it served no purpose and there was no advantage to gain from it. But the issue is, in the last episode, it got so much worse. Galadriel moved from just an insufferable, dislikable character into somebody who is deliberately and knowingly evil. When Galadriel faced Halbrand in the Forge, she started off apologizing.
I was wrong to use you. For that I am sorry.
This means she not only realized that she was using people, but realized that it was wrong to do so. She then opened up, showed some vulnerability, and said that the people I was with, they all betrayed me.
The company I led mutinied against me. My closest friend conspired with the king to exile me. And each of them acted as they did, because I believed they could no longer distinguish me from the evil I was fighting.
And this wasn't true at all. The elves at the start of the series, they didn't want to follow her because she was going against the king's orders. They'd gone too far for too long. And also, what were they going to do anyway? Let's say they had found Sauron and his armies. There were barely any of them there. It was a stupid plan to go on, and they thought she was going to get them all killed through either incompetence or just blind obsession to the point where she didn't care about them.
You're asking me to go to the one place that I swore never to return. The least you can do is tell me why. Why do you keep fighting?
Because I cannot stop.
But they didn't consider her as evil as Sauron. In fact, the only person this comment could have applied to was Gil-galad, who we found out in the last episode he sent her away because he thought she was the cause of the destruction of the tree, that her bringing about the war was the evil that was sapping the tree in the first place.
First took notice of it just prior to Galadriel's return. We hoped that by sending her away and so bringing an end to the last vestiges of war, we might arrest the decay. But despite our every effort, our decline has only quickened.
Except she didn't know any of this. She has no idea why he sent her away in the first place. So she can't be referring to that unless she's actually been watching the show and reading the script. But despite the fact that none of that makes sense, all of this was just an excuse. It was a manipulative tactic. She went forward, said that everyone thinks I'm evil, and yet despite the fact that she understands that this is absolutely disgusting and repulsive behavior, doubles down on it and uses her own evil behavior in the past and apology to manipulate Halbrand emotionally into doing exactly what she wants.
I'm sorry to your brother for all of it.
Your sorrow cannot ease my pain. I know what a hammer and tongs is yours. There is no peace to be found for you here, and nor for me. No lasting peace in any path but that which lies across the sea. I have fought for centuries seeking to earn mine. This is how you earn yours.
She didn't go there to apologize like she pretended in the first place. She went there to get the result, to get him to do as she needed.
Help me.
I think I've helped you quite enough.
Then help yourself. Stop fighting me, and together let us fight them.
And her weapon of choice was emotional blackmail. To use him all over again. Although it is farcical that she did it by just projecting her own feelings onto him. She's known him for 2 days, but apparently knows the only way that he'll ever gain peace. I don't know, love, he looked like he was pretty satisfied making swords to me. But this was never about Halbrand's peace for her. She didn't care whether he could get peace on Numenor or not. She needed him to go to Middle-earth, and so she was willing to say whatever it took, whether it was true or not, to get him there. She was willing to destroy a man's life, take his only chance of happiness away, all so she could guilt-trip him into doing what she wanted.
My brother, he was killed by servants of Sauron. Is that enough for you?
I'm sorry.
Your sorrow cannot ease my pain. I know what a hammer and tongs is yours. There is no peace to be found for you here.
And that is the moment you move from incompetence or obsession hunting someone for revenge into actually deliberately and knowingly evil. That she knew her actions were wrong, apologized for doing it, and only apologized in order to manipulate him and do it all over again. Repeat the same behavior which she just admitted was wrong. Now, for a long time, people have been talking about how bad Galadriel is and how she's a detriment to the show. This was written on September 12th. It's also from the same guy that originally liked Rings of Power from the premiere, and is not someone that agrees with me on a lot of things. It's just that the Rings of Power has such obvious problems that it's unifying people from all sides. That's why his reviews have changed to by episode 5, it's just getting silly now. Talking about the inexplicably terrible writing which the show has, and even admitting himself that the Rings of Power is making a mockery of Tolkien's work. All in all, a very different attitude to what it was originally. And this is one of the major problems with the show. Even if you get all the Tolkien stuff and put it to one side, and look at the show as an independent work on its own own right. It has such fundamental problems that it's amazing it ever got through, and it really makes me question the writers and the showrunners and how on earth they thought any of this behavior was acceptable to put in a show in the first place. Because the characters just keep getting worse. The people you're meant to be rooting for get more and more evil as the show progresses. Oh yeah, Galadriel wanted to leave someone in the snow, but the Harfoots, that's their entire civilization, apparently. A guy broke his foot trying to help them, and they were going to leave him behind. But even when they actually come up with a way to follow them, in the last episode, we had a thing where they arrive in a forest, didn't find as many mushrooms as were there last year, and immediately wanted to murder the people in the back.
These woods have never been this bare this time of year. He's responsible, isn't he? The big fella. Take their wheels and leave them. What's it gonna take?
Seriously, with friends like that, I don't know why you're so busy trying to keep up with them. I'd be running the other way. They're a bigger danger to you than the rest of the world at this point. Even the orcs cared about the other orcs. And it is a major problem if the main characters that I'm supposed to root for are pure evil. Now, there are ways that you can pull it off, but you have to give them some kind of likable characteristic, some kind of reason for me to get invested. They have to reflect some kind of aspect of humanity that I can identify with in order to hook me into the show and make me understand why they're trying to do it. They can't just be evil and an arse and completely insufferable, because it makes me want the enemy to win, which isn't what your show is trying to portray. And this is the other issue with Galadriel, that it is almost like they're trying to give her an arc, because the show does have points where they tell her that she's wrong. When they're first in Numenor, Halbrand, knowing what she's like, says, I don't think you should be too antagonistic to the people of Numenor, we kinda need their help.
Suggest we set history aside for the moment. Show some restraint. Let's try not to antagonize these people.
Then you've got the bit where Elendil tells her that she reminds him of his children. Despite being thousands of years old, she still acts like a spoilt brat, completely impetuous, doesn't care about anyone but herself. These characters are saying this is bad behavior.
Suppose the words never manage to escape your throat. Who is this mortal who speaks to me as if he has the slightest idea who I am?
I have a daughter who runs fast and a son who runs blind. Your eyes bear a striking resemblance to both.
The issue is she's never punished for these actions. Every single thing she does is rewarded. She always gets what she wants. And the show needs that to happen because it keeps saying she's right. Everyone else around her is wrong. It turns it not from a story about a brash, impetuous person who goes through life trying to do something, and by receiving setbacks due to their own actions, and from the comments of other people, slowly learns that you just can't behave that way. It won't get you anywhere in life, and slow over time changes their behavior as they realize that they were wrong. That's not what this story does. Instead, it's I'm insufferable, but everyone around me is so incompetent and wrong, and I'm right, that even when they're telling me that I'm wrong and my behavior is wrong, this is the way that I get things done, and it works. I'm behaving this way because it's required. I am evil only because the world around me is causing me to, because this is the only way that I can get to what I want, and it needs to be done. The ends justify the means. This not only portrays her as right, but it portrays her actions as the correct way to be. That in a tough world led by entirely incompetent people, the only way to act is actually insufferable, in this girl boss kind of way where you're only out for yourself and you can let everyone else die in the snow. And that is why the scene in the Forge is something I simultaneously liked and despised, because it's one of the few scenes in the series which made me feel something. It's just that what I felt was repulsion and disgust, and that shouldn't be for a character who's meant to be the hero of the piece that I root for, because when you realize the show is pushing this as the correct behavior, the way that you should live, the message of that scene was that even if you realize how horrible, disgusting, and repulsive your behavior is, it's still worth it. Even if you realize that you have turned evil, that everyone around you hates you, that all of your friends, every relationship you have ever built, turns against you because of the actually insufferable and disgusting way you are behaving, it is still worth it because you are correct. And it doesn't matter what anyone else in the world thinks. The only thing that matters is your behavior, because you're right. And no matter how many other people disagree with you, dislike you, fall out with you, or leave you, you should always be convinced that you're right. Have this confidence in yourself, because it's not you, it's the rest of the world. And no matter how evil you get, you're just doing what you're forced to by the circumstances around you. It completely removes all responsibility from her, and that is what allows her to double down on the own actions which she sees as evil herself. She comes in and apologizes for using Halbrand, and then emotionally manipulates him into using him again. And the worst thing is, if I'm right about Halbrand's story and where he's going to go, that actually he regretted his past actions and was trying to make amends, And the only reason he gets dragged back into the life he was before is because of Galadriel. Then you've not just made Galadriel evil, but you've made her one of the most evil people to ever have existed. And then you make a story about how she's right. And I don't know how you come back from that. 4 more seasons, if I'm right, I don't even think you have a redemption arc great enough to actually recover from enacting such evil on the world. And the thing is, I'm not sure the writers even understand. I don't think the people that make the show even have the moral compass required to know what they've done. I don't think the writers know how evil the hobbits are. I don't think that's the intention.
Nobody goes off trail. That's right.
We can't carry the cart without you. We're going to be left behind.
We remember those prior migration who fell behind. In life, we could not wait for them. Miles Brightapple, stuck in the snows of the mountain pass.
We wait for you.
Take their wheels and leave them. What's it gonna take?
And that's bizarre to me, because they're so evil, I don't see how anyone couldn't. And yet it's how it's perceived because they keep doubling down. And that's how you get articles like this, admittedly written before the last episode, which is where, for me, Galadriel really dives off the deep end. And he mentions other problems with her, like no emotional range, her only expressions are various shades of a scowl, generally in gritty determination, impatience, or frustration. He even thinks that she's not a Mary Sue because she's thousands of years old and so will have had the training and experience required, which I entirely disagree with and does seem to go against the actual definition that everyone uses as Mary Sue. So, for instance, a character is generally depicted as unrealistically lacking in flaws or weaknesses, often used to describe an author's idealized self-insertion may form as some form of wish fulfillment, as seemingly perfect character with little to no flaws, wish fulfillment or character without flaws, unrealistically capable and virtuous, lacks flaws, depicted in an overly positive light. And I know the counter-argument to that will be, well, you've just called her evil. And I'm like, yes, from my perspective, from my moral outlook, but not from the point of the shows, not from the point of the writers, not from the point of the story they're trying to tell. For the same way that the Harfoots are objectively evil, but the show doesn't think they are. Galadriel is portrayed as doing good, doing the right thing, just in the face of adversity, and that requires her to do these actions. She has no other choice but to do what she's doing. The ends justify the means. The show and the show writers don't see her as evil because they're coming from an entirely different moral framing, an entirely different moral perspective. The fact that she's right and doing what she has to them, means that she's good. Whereas to me, she's doing incredibly evil actions, which means she's evil, end of story, and the ends don't justify the means. And for that reason, she should be subject to justice. Something should happen in the show to knock her down a peg or two, to show her that she's wrong. And yet that never happens, even at the start of an episode when he said, we will not allow an elf to do this. By the end, she has exactly what she's wanted every single time. Everything works out for her. She has flaws from my opinion, but from the show's perspective, she's right, correct, and justified in what she's doing. And I think the inability to separate two different world viewpoints is where a lot of the disagreements form on that issue. How you see the world from your viewpoint and your moral framing to how somebody else does, because morals are not shared across all people, and they are not universal. And he goes into the casting choice. I'm not really sure that's as much of a problem. I think that Morfydd Clark is doing exactly what she was directed to, exactly what she was told to. You want to be the girl boss. You want to be big, hard, and strong. You want to be surrounded by all of these people who are telling you that you're wrong and you're standing up in the face of adversity. You're better than them. I think she's coming across that way because that was the way she was meant to come across. Yes, the character is entirely insufferable, but from the show's perspective, that's just the way you've got to be in this tough, tough world. But I do agree with him that actually basing this show around Galadriel will sink the show. Now, the show is entirely boring. We literally had episode 5, which left us at the same place at the end of episode 5 that we left at episode 4. Nothing happened throughout that entire episode, except Durin has now decided to mine Mithril when he wasn't going to before. It's the only thing that changed throughout the entire thing. But even despite that, even with good writing, I still don't think you could build a show around this Galadriel. Not unless the writers were actually self-aware of what they were writing. Because how can I get pulled into this show when the main character is so antithetical to everything that I believe in that, as far as I'm concerned, I hope Sauron wins. Because at this point, after how she's treated Halbrand, she's kind of got it coming. There has to be some kind of consequence, some kind of justice. Because after how she's acted, someone's got to knock her down a peg or two. And it looks like Sauron's the only one who might actually do it. And he says it's a shame because it's massively expensive and beautifully shot TV show. Something that I generally don't really care about, to be honest. I just don't care about sets. I don't care about how it looks. I can go back to Deep Space Nine and enjoy it now when it looked like trash because the characters and the plot were so great It hooks you in and pulls you throughout the entire series, because you want these people to succeed. When they face adversity, you want them to make it through. That gives risk and tension. When they go into a dangerous thing, you don't know whether they're going to come out the other side, and you want them to. It gives you a reason to root for them. Whereas when Galadriel does basically anything, I hope she fails. And that leads you to watching a show and desperately just waiting for the end. And all of this comes from a guy who thinks that people that were criticizing Rings of Power previously were silly and largely manufactured it themselves. People who made up their minds long before it ever came out, based on the information they had on the time, the marketing that was presented to them by the people creating the show, and the interviews of the cast members and the showrunners and what they told everyone about it. Yes, we made up our minds about what we were told based on what we were told. Seems perfectly fair and legitimate to me, but he thinks that's clearly contrived and enormously nonsensical, despite it being backed up by facts, evidence, interviews by the cast, and the actual show itself. Well, you know, no one bats 10 out of 10. P.S. I'm not suggesting that Galadriel should smile more. I could see why, probably for the best, but making her develop basic social skills could make her feel like a more well-rounded and convincing character. But the issue is the intention that you create something with shines through into the finished work. If you go in wanting to portray a certain point of view, that's the way you'll do it. And the intention here feels like it's Galadriel, who knows everything, is always right, and she's just surrounded by people who are holding her back. If only she could get her own way, if only people would listen to her, then the world would be a perfect utopia, and she could solve everything for them. Is it no wonder that when you go in with an intention like that, the end character, the end result you turn up with, is just someone who's arrogant, egotistical, and looks down on everyone else? Because they do nothing but hold her back. They do nothing but limit her and her massive potential, how amazing she could really be. She treats everyone like she's just scraped them off her shoe, because that's how the writers see them. And given what we know of Hollywood, really does make you wonder if this is just how they see themselves going through life. Because think about what we know. J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, people whose only writing credit was to be uncredited on Star Trek Beyond. Think about what that must do to your own self-esteem. I've written all of these scripts, I've done all of this work, and I never get credited for anything, and nothing gets made. Nobody ever listens to me, despite the fact I'm producing all of these amazing scripts. If only someone would listen to me, if only someone would give me a chance, then I could create the most amazing entertainment ever. That is exactly the position that Galadriel's in. If only someone listened to her, she could do such amazing things. And then they finally got it. They finally got a chance. And that's exactly what Galadriel's getting. In a world where you're just so self-confident that you know what you're making is amazing, it's just nobody else will give you the opportunity. You're the one that's correct, and everyone else around you is incompetent. They just can't appreciate you for your true talents. Is it any wonder that you begin to think that Galadriel's character is correct? That if you can't get people to listen to you the right way, that you just look down on the people around you because you know you're amazing and they just don't appreciate you. You're just so much better than they are, see things so much clearer than they do, that they deserve nothing but to be treated as if you've stepped on them in the street. It's a horrible outlook on life. It leads to a repulsive, disgusting, and evil character that you've created that I'm supposed to root for. But at the end of the day, I can fully understand why that's your outlook on life and how you got to that moral worldview that you think is correct. Now, to me, I don't think the show has any concept of right or wrong, which is something they specifically said this show was supposed to be. It was supposed to be Tolkienian. It was supposed to be good versus evil. It was supposed to depict a hopeful show, and yet the main characters themselves, the people you're supposed to root for, are absolutely disgusting. Because Hollywood long ago lost any idea, any concept of what that even meant. And that's why entertainment now is just a grey mush, always in the dark, gritty areas. The grey morality, searching for some different excuse about why this evil person, actually he's justified in being evil. It's not his fault, it's just all of the people around him. Because they live in a land where to advance in your career, they see it as climbing the slippery pole, and it doesn't matter who you step on to get to the end and be successful. It's no wonder then that's not a situation that I can't relate to. It leads to entertainment where I can't relate to the morality of the piece. And the result is I don't like it, I don't like the characters, and I'm always just waiting for the end of the episode because the characters in it repulse me. And I'm supposed to think they're right. And quite frankly, anyone that would write Galadriel as the hero, the moral one, the good one, the person you're supposed to root for, is not someone I'd want to be. But those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe, more videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.